Hello, and welcome to the Natural State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Gustin. It is my belief that the natural state of any living organism is health, and that our artificial habitat has forced us into having artificial health problems. This show is my attempt to dive deep and learn about using nutrition, sleep, movement, relationships, and more to help you reclaim your natural state of health in a modern world and show you how to thrive in an environment that's stacked against you. If you enjoyed today's show, you can find out more details and information at dranthonygustin.com. Today on the podcast, I welcome Sir Will Harris. Will is the current head of White Oak Pastures, a farm in Bluffton, Georgia, who has an immense amount of experience with what I am pretty obsessed with lately, which is regenerative agriculture. So the system of taking carbon back into the soil and otherwise treating the entire system of how we produce food and manufacture it and distribute it into something that actually is additive towards all of the inputs for the environment, for the animals, for our health, etc. And White Oak is one of the top places in the world for this currently. So we dive into everything in the show regarding how they get their start, why they choose certain animals, all the impacts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you guys, if you've been listening to the show for a while, have probably heard me geek out about all this stuff, but Will is sort of the de facto expert on this and super excited to have him on the show today. So tune in and I hope you guys enjoy. This episode of the Natural State Podcast is brought to you by Four Sigmatic. Four Sigmatic is my favorite purveyor of all things mushrooms and adaptogens. Not sure why these things are important? Well, you can start with my episode I did with Four Sigmatic founder Tara on this subject, but just understand that mushrooms are not part of either animal or plant kingdom. They have unique health properties that are very, very well researched. Everything between boosting mental clarity all the way to naturally supporting the immune system, which I'm sure is something that everybody cares about these days. Also, Four Sigmatic products have been stocked in our kitchen at the Perfect Keto offices for years now and are probably the second most consumed product next to our own. Their most popular product of coffee mixed with chaga, cordyceps, lion's mane mushrooms, etc. Everything to basically take the jitter away from coffee and add a lot of brain boosting elements is the fan favorite at the office and keeps everyone powered through long days without crashing, like they probably would if they had an IV drip of cold brew like most other startups do. Alas, I have been off of caffeine for the last 6 months or so. I've been trying to give my body a rest and recover and get my nervous system back to a point where it's not always thinking it's getting chased by a lion. So what I've been doing is I've been using their adaptogen powder, which has 10 different mushrooms, roots, leaves, berries, and superfoods with their mushroom blend that has another 10 different types of mushrooms every day for the last 6 months or so. And I've actually personally seen a huge improvement in my HRV, stress levels, recovery, etc. If I'm facing down a really big work day, I actually added an extra packet of both their lion's mane and cordyceps and mix all of that together with a scoop of exogenous ketones, and it lights my brain up like nothing else can. I've asked the team at Four Sigmatic to hook you guys up, and so they're giving all listeners of the Natural State Podcast 15% off your Four Sigmatic order. Just go to foursigmatic.com/AG15 or enter code AG15, that's AG15 at checkout. That is FOURSIGMATIC.com/AG15 to receive 15% off your order. This show is also brought to you by Blue Blocks, blue light blocking glasses. Blue light is one of these things that a lot of people do not realize is completely trashing their sleep. So this is verified, at least for me. I've looked at my Oura Ring, and anytime I get blue light exposure from devices past, say, 4 p.m., the latency, the time it takes for me to fall asleep, as well as my deep sleep are completely diminished. And when I wear glasses like Blue Blocks, it completely reverses that, and I can get a full rested sleep with no problem. There are a lot of brands out there right now that are trying to get on this trend of blocking blue light for good reason. And what happens is most of them are either really cheap and they break super easily, they are terrible looking and make you look like a freaking goon, or they actually just don't work. So I've tried some out that, are sort of a spectrum of any of these things, all the way to being so dark that I get headaches from wearing them. And what I like about Blue Blocks is it sort of addresses all of these things. So they're made actually in Australia, really, really high quality stuff. They have 20 plus different styles of each one. So no matter what sort of style fits your head and your face, my face is sometimes a little tough to make look good. So I'm glad they have options for me. But also they test all of their lenses to make sure that they meet specific criteria to block very specific wavelengths of light. And this is the important part here. Not a lot of brands do this. And so I've actually tested theirs side by side. I mean, you can do this as easily as just looking at a spectrum of blue, and you put on their glasses and you can't see the blue anymore. It goes completely black, or it has a shade of a gray. And this is what you want. And these guys who have done this company have done a phenomenal job at really sourcing the highest quality lenses, highest quality frames, and the ones that actually look good. So I'm not embarrassed when I put these on in public. And I asked them if they could hook you guys up, and they obliged. So 15% off is yours if you use code AG15. Also, you get free shipping. So if you want to, just head to BLUBLOX.com and use code AG15. That's blueblocks.com. Use code AG15 for 15% off and free shipping. Will, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to chat with me today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me as your guest. I've been looking forward to it.
So what is the day in the life of Will Harris right now looking like?
I tell you, I got a really good life. I don't mean to brag, but I really got a good life. I get up pretty early, and I go out and I go around the farm. The farm's about 5,000 acres, and we got 160 employees, and it's fully vertically integrated. And it's a super simple business with just a lot of moving parts. And I spend most of my day looking for problems and solving them. And I love the people I work with. I love what I do, and I love the farm. And I pray I'll be able to do it for a long, long time.
Okay. And that farm that you're mentioning, White Oak Pastures. So this has been in the family for a while?
Yes, sir. My great-granddaddy came here in 1866 and started this farm. His son, my granddaddy farmed it. His son, who's my daddy, farmed it. I've been on the land all my life. I'm 65 years old. I've got two daughters in their 30s and their spouses that are in management here now. And between the two of them, they got three children. I got three grandchildren here on the farm. So it's a six-generation old farm, and three generations live here now.
It's amazing. And you guys are sort of what people think of when they think regenerative ag in the U.S. right now, at least. And just curious, has it always been that way? Like how has the family farm changed over the years?
It has changed dramatically. I guess one of the things I enjoy most about the farm is how over the six generations, 154 years, it's come full circle. The way my great-grandfather and grandfather would have worked this land would have been with all their focus on the animals, the land, and the community. I should say that my farm surrounds the little town of Bluffton, Georgia. It's an incorporated city with 102 people in it. My father took over the farm post-World War II and really made sweeping changes. That was the era in which agriculture in this country made three huge changes. They commoditized, industrialized, and centralized. And he ran the farm that way all his life.
Well, at that point, was it just that, they just thought, that this is sort of the only option we have is what we're going forward with? Or what was that shift like? I mean, did anybody at that time really put much thought into it?
So World War II was a game changer. World War II, brought technology to the forefront. People had plowed with mules, and they went to the European theater and drove tanks and trucks. And ammoniated fertilizer was actually invented in the 1880s, but it was so expensive nobody used it on the farm. But post-World War II, the munitions manufacturing facilities were repurposed to be ammoniated fertilizer facilities. So ammoniated fertilizer became very cheap. Let me tell you some stories about that. The first pesticides came from the World War II tear gas or gas warfare research, 2,4-D. It was a game changer. And also, the Europe, post-World War II, Europe was starving. There was a need for cheap, abundant, safe, quote unquote, food. And when my father's generation made the changes, industrialized the farm, commoditized the farm, centralized the farm, it made food, I'm going to say it made food obscenely cheap and wastefully abundant and boringly consistent. And that's, but it was just wildly successful. It made food cheap. But it had unintended consequences. The cheap food had unintended consequences that fell on the backs of the welfare of the animals and the degradation of the land, air, water, and the impoverishment of rural America. So, and it took until now, I say the early 2000s, for those unintended consequences, which were unnoticed consequences, to come to light. So some of us have been working for the last 25 years to, again, go full circle back to I call it kinder, gentler agriculture.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, one of the questions I want to ask you before we get started here was just that there's so much of this shifting. I think we look backwards with very clear 2020 vision and say, oh, we should never have done X, Y, or Z. And you said that there's a lot of these forces that shifted us for good reason into doing this to be able to sustain the people that we had with the forms we needed. But I think that these things take such a long time. The feedback loop of, oh, this input is not working and the output is actually really bad, sometimes can take a very, very long time. And so, I guess to your estimation, that took about 50 years or so. And just curious, as far as your perspective, I mean, was the farm under your control when you guys switched it back over? And what did it look like then? And how has that path been?
It was under my control, and I'll tell you that. But can I also address what you just said about we make these changes and then we say, oh, didn't realize that was going to happen? Mm-hmm. Can I tell you my perspective on why that is?
Of course.
So I am White Oak Pastures is a savory holistic management hub. We follow the teachings of Alan Savory with regard to the management of the land, regenerative management of the land. And our observation is that a farm, like your body or the United States government, is a very complex system. There's a lot of stuff going on in there. And if something changes, everything morphs and it keeps operating. It's just different. Reductionist science works great on complicated systems like this computer or your wristwatch or the space shuttle. You can change variables and predict accurately what's going to happen. But reductionist science does not work well on complex systems. And the mistake we've made so often is to apply reductionist science to a complex system like a farm, and you get unintended consequences. You can't predict because you don't know how all those complex systems are going to morph. That's the reason you have recalls of pharmaceuticals and pesticides, and they were discovered through reductionist science. Reductionist science doesn't work well in complex systems, and a farm is a very complex system.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually the biggest thing that I say when people ask me, do I think that there's ever going to be a future for lab-grown meat? And I think there's a lot of different answers of why I'm sort of against that. But the way I view it is, I mean, the complex system argument is one that I think people don't understand that, you're taking two different complex systems, in this case of a human and their body, and then growing an animal and the nutrition that the human needs, and trying to interface in predicting that, all the nutrition that a human needs in that complex system, combined with the complex system of the cow or whatever animal that you're going to produce in mass in a laboratory, thinking that those are going to mix. If we knew that, we wouldn't need to grow food at that point because we're going to be merged with machines. There's just a certain understanding in which we're never going to be able to grasp all the ramifications of changing the inputs of a complex system.
Yeah, when you were saying that, the complexities of the human body's need, the complexities of growing, what could go wrong? I mean, what could possibly go wrong with that?
Yeah, everything.
Everything is destined to go wrong. We say we trust cows more than we trust chemists.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when did was it like a sort of light bulb moment for you when you're going on as is, you grew up probably a certain way in the system, and then you got exposed to Alan Servy's work and then sort of started digging down a rabbit hole, or what was the path for you to shift things?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I went to the University of Georgia, majored in animal science, College of Agriculture, graduated in 1976, and I came home and further industrialized the farm. And I took it to another level past what my father had taken it to, and enjoy it. It was a monocultural cattle farm, nothing but cows, a cow factory. Used all the tools that reductionist science gave me: hormone implants, subtherapeutic antibiotics, confinement feeding of a natural carbohydrate diet, just on and on and on. And was financially successful doing it. We weren't rich people, but we lived very comfortably. I paid taxes every year. So it was, but in my 40s, what had been really exciting to me in my 20s was no longer exciting. You're seeing how much I could squeeze out of an acre of land and squeeze out of a cow. So I guess I became disgusted with the excesses of what I was doing. And it happened gradually, and I started changing slowly. Animal welfare was kind of the canary in the coal mine for me, and I started changing my animal husbandry practices and more to a more humane direction. And that led me to change my land management practices, and that led me to rebuilding this community. So it's another evolution, and it's still going on. We still are figuring it out 25 years later.
Okay. So if somebody, who has a farm currently doing monocrop of either any sort of vegetable or of an animal, with the information that's available in 2020, is there like a typical cost or time frame in which it takes to switch over the land from a model that is broken to one that you think would be at least carbon neutral?
Yeah. So it's much slower than you would believe it would be, or you would want it to be. When the land is what takes the time. You can convert other things fairly quickly, but the land, if it's been farmed commercially with a lot of tillage and chemical fertilizers and pesticides and GMOs, then the land has been turned into a dead mineral medium. The land that I started with 25 years ago and the land that I'm acquiring now, every year I try to add a piece of land, is less than 0.5% organic matter. And that is a dead mineral medium. And it has taken me 20 years to go from 0.5% organic matter to 5% organic matter. And that at 5% organic matter, then you've got a medium that's teeming with life as opposed to a dead mineral medium. I give you this. So 1% organic matter of soil will contain about an inch of rain, about 20,000 gallons on an acre of land, which is 1 inch of rain. That's 1%. So if you got 0.5% organic matter, like I started with, you can handle, the land can absorb a 1/2 of inch rain event, 1/2 of 1 inch. When it gets up to 5%, which is where we are now, it'll absorb a 5-inch rain event. And just imagine how much more productive your land is if it holds 100,000 gallons of water instead of 10,000 gallons of water. and how much better the downstream effect is from flooding and topsoil erosion and all the other things that happen if you got 5% versus 0.5%.
Right.
But to answer your question, the conversion is almost a straight line from over 20 years, from 0.5% to 5%. It's almost a straight line up.
So yeah, you went from 0.5% to 5% over 20, 25 years?
20 years, yes, sir.
Is there a point where that turns a corner or flattens out? Like, does it stop at, is it upper threshold? Like, do we have any examples where it's 10%, 20%, et cetera? Or does it sort of top out regionally for certain climates, or how do you see that in other areas?
That too is a great question. And that is argued long and often by soil scientists. And I can tell you my opinion. And my opinion is, no, it does not top out. What happens is, admittedly, a cubic foot of soil will only get to be of a certain percentage organic matter. And I don't know exactly what that is. But what happens is the soil gets deeper. You get layer upon layer upon layer. So my belief is that it doesn't top out, that it continues to go. And time will tell us. We will know one day, because we're still doing it.
Right. And I think that, a good example of this, I think is Gabe Brown, his soil and how much that increased. I think it was a couple inches, like 80 inches or something like that. Have you guys done studies around how much your soil depth has increased?
Well, every time I hear Gabe Brown's name, I say, Gabe Brown's a hack. And I say that because Gabe Brown's the best friend I got in the world. He is great. And I've been to his farm, and he's been to mine a number of times. And we agree that the soil will get deeper and deeper. But I don't think any of us have been doing it long enough to have a peer-reviewed scientific study that would document that.
Right. I mean, this is the tough part about this thing, is that so many Americans and so many politicians, and just the way we're sort of wired for results right now, is things need to be immediate, and they need to be measured, and they need to be scientific. And this is sort of the challenge I see of the adoption of these practices moving forward. So I'm just curious, as far as your take goes, regarding shifting some public opinion, and what we can do and convincing people that's worthwhile doing.
Well, I mean, to be sure, Mother Nature bats last, and she will do this at her own rate. And for us to command soil to become richer and better and more productive is like these politicians demanding that coronavirus go away. I mean,
that's a good point.
It will happen at its own rate. Some of us who have been doing it for a long, long time and studied it very, very hard have opinions, and I just gave you mine. And I think that I know Gabe would agree, and I think most people that have made this their life's work would agree that we'll probably, think about all the oil and coal and natural gas reserves that are in the land still, and we've been pulling on it for 100 years. So think about how many pounds of carbon that is. Well, that carbon got sequestered down there just like I'm doing it now. It just became fossil fuel. We had a scientific study. In fact, I urge you to go to our website, oakpastures.com, and look under our land regeneration tab. You'll see a link to a scientific study that was done on our land that documents these things I'm telling you about the percent organic matter. But if you take the pounds of carbon that study shows that we have successfully done over the last 20 years, we sequester the equivalent of 7 barrels of oil in the carbon equivalent in every acre every year. Isn't that incredible? 7 barrels of oil worth of carbon in every acre every year.
Yeah, and I think this is something that a lot of people who don't understand the importance of this statement and think that they, by eating vegetarian or vegan or switching away from commercial meat to going to Impossible or Beyond Burger or just not eating meat at all, don't understand the spectrum doesn't stop at zero. So it doesn't go from carbon emissions at 30 pounds per pound of meat produced or whatever to, however you want to estimate that, down to zero. You guys have done a study that shows that there's negative carbon from your meat production. So carbon goes into the soil.
Negative 3.5 pounds of carbon dioxide equivalent for every pound of beef I produce. Peer-reviewed scientific study. Coincidentally, Impossible Burger had the same environmental engineering group do a study, and it showed they had a positive footprint. So,
it was positive 4 pounds, if I recall correctly, or around there.
Yeah, coincidentally, their positive was the same as our negative, 3.5.
So I have to eat one of your burgers for every one Impossible Burger that somebody else eats.
To stay
to even things out.
Yeah, you got to eat 1 pound of mine for every pound of theirs so you can break even.
Yeah, and I think that another thing is that I'm not sure about the exact split that you guys have. Like, is it full animal production, or are you guys using, or like, is there any purpose, I guess, for regenerative agriculture to have plants and vegetables, or is it pretty much all of this is done via animal production?
Well, I grow certified organic vegetables. I have a vegetable production manager, and we grow vegetables and sell frozen vegetables on our website, in our store, and we have a restaurant and cook our vegetables. I don't know how to build carbon raising vegetables. Now, Gabe does. Gabe Brown is a better plant farmer than I am. I'm the livestock guy, and I know how to build carbon with animal impact.
Okay. As far as Gabe and everything he's done, do you know if it's a similar sort of sequestration, or that really gets pumped up with the livestock?
I don't know. I suspect that our trend line for improvement would be very similar.
Right.
Gabe's in Bismarck, North Dakota, and I'm 100 miles from the Gulf of Mexico in Georgia. So very, very different ecosystem. And Gabe does use animals in his production model. Animal impact I think animal impact is essential in any carbon building ecosystem that's unless you got a trust fund and just don't care how much money you spend.
Right.
Anything there, but,
yeah, I mean, like you said, nature's going to do what it's going to do, but if you want that to happen, you need to allow it to be in its natural state. And so removing animals entirely from the land is a very unnatural state. I mean, if you just go out and walk around in anywhere that's not populated by people, you'll know that there's this symbiosis of animals and plants everywhere.
Absolutely. What we do is biomimicry. It's the emulation of nature. In my model, Gabe's would be similar. We have 140 or something paddocks, about 30 acres apiece. We've got a very large herd of cows. It's right now it's over 2,000 head. And they will go, we move them every day to a new paddock, and it's intense animal impact. They eat most of it, they tread on the rest of it, and they defecate on the rest of it and urinate on the rest of it. So hard animal impact on the land, and then a very long recovery time so that the grass and the forbs all come back. And it emulates the herds of bison moved by wolves, or caribou moved by polar bears, or gazelles moved by lions. Those are prey animals. The ruminants are prey animals. The safety comes from bunching. So that's why they have such hard animal impact. And then the predators are moving them constantly. So what we do is just emulate that. And we're the predator. So we move them every day to a new pattern. And it's an imperfect emulation of nature, but it's pretty damn good.
Right. And how many other animals do you have on there, and how do they sort of relate to that system?
So we raise 5 red meat species: cows, hogs, sheep, goats, rabbits. We raise 5 poultry species: chickens, turkeys, geese, guineas, ducks. We have pastured eggs and vegetables and honey and a bunch of other stuff. And in a perfect world, in a perfect world, you would have the animals following each other fairly closely. I say loosely following each other. And we do a certain amount of that, but it's very difficult. Animals move at different speeds. So it's very difficult to just like a synchronized dance act with them moving around. So what we do is we call it prescriptive grazing, prescriptive land management. And the land manager, who is me, I look at virtually every paddock every day and make the decision, this paddock needs hog impact. Every species has a different impact. Hogs versus cows versus sheep versus goats versus poultry. And based on what's happening on a piece of land, what's growing on it, what should be growing on it, what it needs, I'll decide what species to put there.
What type of things are you looking for?
In the case of the grasses, there's certain grasses that cattle won't eat or prefer not to eat. The sheep will eat. Certain species that the goat will eat, the sheep won't eat. And when we see one species that we think is becoming too predominant, we'll hammer it with the animal that's going to knock that down and give the other grasses and forbs a competitive edge so that they can come on. It's just a prescription, make a prescription. In the case of hogs are primarily forest creatures. We do put them in the pastures, but when we need them. But when woods start to get too thick, we'll put those hogs in there with that shovel nose of theirs, let them open it up a little bit, and more succulent species of plant will grow, and then we'll prescribe what animal will do best on that plant.
Interesting.
And there's a lot of symbiosis that comes from running these animals together. The internal parasites that adversely affect cattle don't bother sheep and vice versa. So having sheep and cattle running together or in close, following each other very closely, it's like a dead-end street for the neonates of the internal parasite species that you're trying to manage away from.
Right. Have you guys noticed a benefit every time you've added in a new species?
Yes.
Do you have any more that you're yet to add that you want to put in?
I don't know. We're always looking, but I don't have any plans. The other thing is you got to be able to market. If you grow armadillos, you kind of need something to do to monetize the armadillo meat, and there's not much of a market. So it's a business as well as an ecosystem.
Right. And I mean, it's sort of interesting too, how people, especially in this country, have gotten so tunnel vision with what is nutritious food and where does it come from? And if it's only a certain cut of a certain animal produced a certain way, it is fit for consumption for humans. So how have you guys sort of done education around, some of these other animals that are maybe a little non-conventional and how people can still get the same amount of nutrition from them?
Well, a lot of what you said comes from the centralization, industrialization, commoditization. When when a big, huge poultry company that processes 250,000 to 500,000 chickens per day at a plant, they need to logistically find that, over time, Americans will eat all the breast meat we can produce at a price that's profitable. We ship all the dark meat to Latin America or China, and we can sell the feet certainly in China. And if you're in the grocery store, there's just not room. That real estate in that meat cooler is a very expensive commodity for that grocer. So he can't put a lot of chicken hearts in there because he's not going to sell a lot of chicken hearts. He tie up, 10 inches of valuable display, refrigerated display for chicken hearts, and I sell it a pound a week. For us, it's completely different from that. When we kill a chicken, we don't have to sell a chicken heart. We're going to sell some breast, we're going to sell some thighs, we're going to sell some cages for broth, or we make broth ourselves to sell. So it's not look where the demand is and offer it. It's the land yields a bounty, and the bounty is a cow and a hog and a chicken and a goat, and we harvest that cow, hog, chicken, goat in our own farm processing plant, and it yields these components we're talking about: liver and pancreas and spleen. And we sell it through our online store. And people who have studied human nutrition and know that there's a benefit from eating spleen and liver. And ethnic people that can't go to their local shiny grocery store and pick up pancreas can order it from us. So, it's a natural system for us instead of a factory. That makes sense?
Yeah. And you guys, when did you start making this switch to selling online? Because it seems like that's without that and without being able to access all people who could find you and acquire this stuff. Like you said, you need to be able to sell this stuff. You need to be able to move it through the system. With that, I'm sure you would get, because again, there's no natural predators, as then the farm probably wouldn't work as well. And so we have to be those natural predators. We have to sort of step in and eat these animals. And I think that there's a lot of, people who out there who think that we should just let them live out very happy lives until they peacefully fade away one night with their loved ones around them. But it's not how the world works. So just curious as far as like how you guys made that transition. And I guess the second part of the question is, about harvesting the animals and the ethical implications of that some people, I think, push back on sometimes.
That's two big questions. So I'll do the first one first. The first thing that happened is I decided I didn't like the way I was farming 25 years ago. So I changed it. And when I changed it, I added value to my product. It cost me more to raise the cow. Back then it was just cows, because I gave up those tools. So it cost me more. I was adding value to my beef that I was not able to extract from the commodity market. So we started marketing White Oak Pastures grass-fed beef. White Oak Pastures was already the name of the farm. And we caught traction. At that time, nobody much was raising grass-fed beef and marketing in this country. We were very early into that party. And I was using local slaughter facilities to slaughter the animals. I was raising them, and we were selling them, mostly halves and quarters and stuff like that. Then before I got profitable doing that, the guys that were doing my local slaughter maxed out on what they could do for me. And I was not particularly happy with the job they were doing. So we took a great plunge and built on-farm slaughter. And at that time, there was only one other one in the country. And ultimately, I borrowed $7.5 million to build on-farm slaughter. So red meat plant for cows, hogs, sheep, goats, and a poultry plant for the chickens, turkeys, geese, guineas, and ducks. And when I did that, it increased my production capacity a lot. And I found wholesale markets. That's when I went to the wholesale grocers and food service people and offered them my product. And they bought it, and it worked well for several years. But over the last 5 years, it's not worked so well anymore. And that's because my margins at wholesale grocery have shrunk. And that's because of imported greenwashed product. I mean, we can talk about that a long time, but just know that greenwashed product took the profit out of my wholesale business. So we started our own line business and spent for us a lot of money doing it. And it has been increasing steadily, slowly, but steadily. And we like that a lot. We really like selling direct to consumers. But since this pandemic, it has absolutely exploded.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking the other day at getting some stuff and picking up a little pack for myself, and nothing was in stock. So I have to assume that a lot of people have the same mentality as me, at least.
We're struggling, and I'm about to invest in building a order fulfillment center. I got a little order fulfillment center, but it's very, very small because I don't have very much business. We're going to bet the farm again. This is about the 6th time I bet it in my life, and build a order fulfillment center in the prayer that we'll keep some of this business that we've gotten from the pandemic. I told my daughters and my other management people, we discussed it, and I said, well, our numbers of customers has blown up just exponentially. And when this is over, I know we'll keep a percentage. And I know that percentage will be somewhere between 0% and 100%. And if it's 10 or 20%, we're gonna lose bad. But if it's 60 or 70%, we're gonna be okay. But we got to take the chance. We've got this opportunity to sell direct to consumers, and so we're looking for the financing right now, and we'll find it and we're going to do it.
And so around, I just want to take it back to the comments around why your margins got slashed. And I think that there's a lot of people who don't understand the term greenwashing, what that is, and sort of how that process works. So curious as far as your take.
Greenwashing is what we farmers, we regenerative, humane, community building farmers call product that is pretty much commodity industrial product, but has been had the story spun so that it looks like it's ours. It sounds like it's the genuine article, and it's it's a shame. It's what big multinational food companies do. It's not new. They're really good at it, and when they make claims that they are doing what we're doing, they're not, then they devalue what we're doing. And they have put a lot of good farmers out of business and kept a lot of good farmers from evolving into this business. And it's legal. I mean, you probably know that you can have a cow that was born and raised and slaughtered in Australia and brought to this country and sold as grass-fed beef product of the USA. And it was raised 10,000 miles from here on another continent, in another hemisphere. It's legal.
Yeah, I mean, why the hell is that the case? I mean, there's something that it's
because
drives me nuts.
Because politicians make policy, and politicians are influenced by lobbyists, and lobbyists work for big international food companies.
And that's the way it goes.
A consumer gets tricked every time they buy food, depending on that label. and they get tricked often when they buy food based on a certification. The only way a consumer cannot get tricked is if he knows the farmer or something about the farmer that produced his food. It's a shame. It makes shopping really hard, but you got to either have been to the farm or you got to know you could go to the farm. I built cabins on this farm for lodging and a restaurant so people could come eat. And we operate with full transparency. And before this pandemic, we had a lot of guests here. We had a number of guests every day. And we don't have a petting zoo or corn maze. They come here to see how we do it. And it's not a kids event. It's for people that want to understand the food system and enjoy the transparency. And we have a lot of customers that have never been here, but they see what we do on social media, and they know they can come unannounced and unexpected anytime they want to and see anything we do, from pigs being born to cattle being slaughtered.
Right. So that also, I think, transitioned to another interesting point that I'm sort of curious about, as far as, you get a lot of questions about this stuff scaling in the food system in general. And I have a lot of confidence that we have the techniques and we know how to produce the right amount of food. And I think there's a lot of information, supporting the availability of land to change it over to provide enough and produce enough. But when it comes down to distribution, you guys are shipping a lot direct, but how do you see the distribution of food needing to change and modify to be able to get all of this into enough people's hands for it to really make a difference?
Well, so the White Oak Pastures model, or the Gabe Brown model, or the Greg Gunthorpe model, or the Spencer Smith model, like that going on, is not highly scalable. White Oak Pastures is probably about as big as it needs to be, but it's highly replicatable. There can be, should be, a White Oak Pastures or 2 or 3 in every agricultural county in this nation. It'd be good for the land, good for the environment, good for the people eating the food, good for the rural communities, and it's highly replicatable. What we've done here was done by a C student with bank loan, bank debt. Not a Rhodes Scholar with a trust fund. It's highly replicatable, but it won't be replicated unless consumers want it to be.
Right. So it needs to be started with, or needs to be scaled via the demand.
It's got to be. You can't do what we do here unless you can monetize the bounty that the land provides.
Is there, you guys are also doing a lot of really interesting stuff. Like, for instance, I use your body wash, and there's a lot of parts of the animals that aren't used, and you guys are getting really creative with that. Do you think that also some of the problem is just people not utilizing enough of the supply chain?
Yeah. We go back to what we produce. The land yields a bounty, an abundance, and the abundance is a cow, a hog, or a chicken. And it's incumbent upon us to find a use for every bit of that. And we sell virtually everything off every animal except for the absolutely inedible portions, and that we make compost to spread it back on the land. It's a zero waste endeavor. We dehydrate tracheas and penises and esophaguses for pet treats. We take the fat and make a rounded fat product, a tallow bar and a lard bar. The beef tallow is called Tallow Be Thy Name, and the pork lard bar is called Praise the Lard, or Lord Have Mercy, I think it is. But we We make compost, we make leather products, purses and stuff, and make soup by the bones, and it's incumbent upon us, out of respect for nature, to use all that.
Right.
And we need to monetize it. We got, money is to us is not. It's less important than it is to like a stock company, publicly traded company. But we've got to have a certain amount of it, like the blood in our body. We got to pay 160 people. I told you we're the largest private employer in the county, and we want to pay them well. We got to buy packaging, and we just have to monetize. We're not looking for huge profits. I tell them, it's like, why do I want an extra 5 gallons of blood? But I got to have enough blood to circulate through my body. But I don't want any extra. If I give you extra, I buy another piece of land.
What did you guys start with as far as land mass goes when you were getting into it?
We have 1,000 acres. I inherited 1,000 acres of land from my daddy, granddaddy, great-granddaddy. Today, the farm's about 5,000 acres. We own about a little over 2,000 and lease the rest of it.
And then you're now at, you said you're at 5,000?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That 5,000 just got there. That includes an arrangement with a solar energy provider, regenerative solar provider called Silicon Ranch out of Nashville. They have a 1,425 acre property that they just turned over to us, and we're using our sheep for the vegetation control, and erosion control, and we're going to have poultry there to add nutrients to the soil.
I'm sure that there's a lot of different factors that go into it regarding different areas and regions of the country where this is possible. What would you say would be the minimum amount of land needed to have an operation where you could get some production out of it that would be worthwhile? Is it something that needs to be hundreds of acres, or is it dozens in the smallest end?
You can grow a tremendous amount of vegetables and rabbit and poultry on an acre of land. You got to be able to monetize it for enough to make a living. If you have an acre of land in Bluffton, Georgia, where we're very remote, very scarcely populated, and pretty impoverished, you probably couldn't sell enough stuff off of it. If you had an acre of land that was in striking distance of New York or Atlanta or Chicago, you could probably make a living with an acre of land. So you've got to structure your production unit to fit the land and fit the market. It's just like 3 legs on a stool. You got production, which is how much land you got and what you're going to do with it. You got processing, which is for us meant building a red meat plant and a poultry plant. And then you got the marketing side of being able to monetize what comes out of it. And like the legs on a stool, one can't get too long or too short without the stool tipping over. And the hardest part of running a business like this is keeping those 3 legs coming up or down at the right rate.
What is the need for a large ruminant per, is there carrying capacity per acre of like cattle, for example?
Sure. So, and it's highly variable with the biome that you're operating in.
Right.
On my land, that's 5% organic matter in Georgia, I can feed a cow per acre. Before I made it 5%, it probably took 3 or 4 acres.
Got it.
And if you're in, and I get 50 in the coastal plains of Georgia, I get 52 inches of rain a year on the average. If you were raising cattle in the high desert, it can take tremendous amounts of acreage to support one cow. I mean, maybe 50, maybe more than 50 acres per cow.
Interesting. And as we sort of switch over into the future of this, and we're talking about consumer demand needing to drive all of this. I know that there's some groups out there like Regenerative Organic that are trying to create a certain standard around this so that people can get together and actually say, hey, this is what I want. Do you think that's necessary, or sort of what is your view around the, labeling it and marketing it from a collective of not just White Oak Pastures, but this sort of movement that encompasses everything that you guys are doing?
Well, that's going to be a complicated answer. First, disclosure. I'm on the board of Regenerative Organic certification, and it's a little odd for me to be on that board because, and I'll say the ROC is probably the gold standard for certifications. They are really setting a high bar, and I respect what they're doing. And I went on that board because I was asked by one of the founders. He needed a farmer that had my experience, and I went on there to help with that. Generally, I am not a fan of certifications. When certifications first came to be available, which is in early 2000, it started with Certified Humane. That was the first one that was out there, other than Certified Organic, which is different. But I thought that was going to be the salvation for my kind of farming. That we get certified, consumers would have confidence in it, and they could buy it, and save me having to do a lot of marketing. It'd just be great. But it didn't work out that way. The certification industry exploded, and now a farmer can get a certification for any shade of gray, from snow white to smut black. So right. The consumer is hopelessly confused. So I have become full circle because I'm not a fan of certification. I think you just got to know your farmer. And even with certifications, even the great ones, there's some crappy ones. Even the great ones like Regenerative Organic certification or certified AG, American Grass Fed Association, certified grass fed. You still got give and take. I mean, you got to have to a certain extent a common denominator that it's just kind of part of commoditization. And I think people just got to know their farmer. Know them through social media if you can't go visit the farm. And you got to know you can go visit the farm if you want to.
Yeah, and farmers markets are a good way to do that. If not, Eat Wild is a really good website that aggregates a lot of different farms. And yeah, I mean, this is one of the main questions that I get, when it comes to sourcing food of someone in whatever town, not even close to here, is what should I ask when I go to the farm? Like, what are the things that I should know? I mean, do you have sort of a list of questions that would filter out ones who are not doing it the right way?
Well, I don't think I've ever been asked that, but I think I can probably come up with one. In terms of animal welfare, are your animals raised on a manner that allows them to express their instinctive behavior every day? Mm-hmm. Yes or no? And the answer needs to be yes. Chickens need to be out there scratching and pecking. Hogs need to be out there rooting and wallowing. Cows need to be where they can roam and graze. Those are instinctive behaviors. Are your animals able to do that? Yes or no? In terms of the land regeneration, it's a little bit more complicated, but I think it would be: do you use chemical fertilizer? Do you use pesticides? Do you use tillage? Do you use GMOs? And do you have animal impact on your land? The answer needs to be yes. In terms of the fairness, the component, the human component, tell me who works in the farm and tell me about them. And It doesn't need to be a lot of migrant people in and out seasonally with a high turnover, and I really don't know their name. And that if you got the right answer for those three questions, then you're on your way. You want to see some pictures. And again, you want to know you could go visit that farm if you wanted to. If transparency is not there, then authenticity is not there. And authenticity is the only tool a farmer's got to use against greenwashed product. Only tool is authenticity.
Right. Well, thank you for doing all the work that you're doing and for sharing some of your wisdom that is hard learned, I'm sure, over the last 25 plus years. So appreciate it. And then, obviously folks can find you guys at whiteoakpastures.com. Is there anywhere else that you'd like to send people?
No, I think that I do urge you to come and look, particularly our land regeneration, land stewardship tab. I think you might find very, very interesting, especially in view of what's going on with the lack of resilience in the American food production system these days. It's literally falling apart, and there's some reasons for it, and that lack of resilience is the primary reason.
Got it. Well, thanks again for your time, Will. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Natural State Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I'd really appreciate you heading over to whatever service you're listening to this podcast on, dropping me a 5-star review and your thoughts on the show. This helps us get discovered by more people and spreading the good gospel of health. And if you want to stay plugged into all of my self-health experiments, recent research and books that I'm reading and my interpretations of those things, products that I'm testing, and thoughts on all things related to health, check out my free weekly newsletter called The Feed. You can sign up for that at dranthonygustin.com/thefeed. That's dranthonygustin.com/thefeed. Thanks again for tuning in and your support of the Natural State Podcast.